Good morning, everybody. We'll just give everyone a few seconds to join. Just moving through 50 participants. Very good. We're absolutely delighted to host this webinar on unlocking opportunities in social care with big data. Principally because I think big data is going to be one of the big topics that comes out of COVID and the pandemic. And this particular webinar we're doing in partnership with CACI and Barbour ABI, who are both data providers in their own right. I wanted to start by, as usual, encouraging everybody who's on the line to log into Slido. And this is principally so we can have a much more interactive discussion. I think this session over the next hour really will be very much one for discussion because there's so many new things around big data. But if I could just encourage participants, if they have a smartphone or an iPad or a browser on their laptop or desktop, if you just go to that browser and put in Slido, SLIDO or SLI.do, both of them work. And then you come up with hopefully a window that looks a bit like this: joining as a participant, enter event code. And if you just put in the words big data, all one word, all lowercase, that will join you to this event. And you will see a window that looks a little bit like this. And this is really our ability to run polls and to ask Q&A of our panelists. But more importantly, you can do it anonymously. So if you don't want to be identified, that's absolutely fine. And secondly, you can vote here on the questions. So you can upvote the questions that you'd like the panelists to answer. So at the moment, we're running a live poll. What I might do is just switch to that poll and just see how we're doing in terms of responses. So we've had 7 votes so far. And the question is, will big data make a practical difference in 2020? I think one of the themes of today is everybody talks about big data, but actually, is it going to make a difference near term, or is this a medium term ambition, or is this something that we can actually use now in how we manage our businesses? So I will let that run in the background, and we'll come back to that at the end. Just to set the scene before we turn to our panelists, we had some questions from the audience beforehand, and just to go through them very quickly. Which countries or organizations are most advanced in using big data? I think we hear a lot about how the UK has a unique data set, certainly from a healthcare perspective, because we have the NHS. But increasingly, we're hearing that France and Scandinavia in particular, and of course a number of Asian countries, are also mining their data sets very effectively. So are there other organizations or countries doing it better than us that we can perhaps learn from? What are the key insights we can draw from big data in influencing the customer journey and the decisions in social care? And I think that's a topic which we will absolutely address today, because we've got some speakers on who spend their time mining that data and understanding that customer journey. What indicators would you focus on when trying to assess elderly care demand in one specific area? Again, we've got absolutely the right panelists for that. Which care software on the market is the best at collecting data and producing meaningful reports? And I think Daya will talk to that from experience. And what's the best way for small providers to access some of this data? And I'll talk about that now, actually, because I think there's a lot of information that's out there in the public domain. So what is big data? I think for the purposes of this webinar, we're focused very much on know your customer. Who is your customer, your client, your potential service user or resident? What's their profile? Where are they? How do you reach them? It's about identifying new markets, and particularly from a practical perspective, where might you build a new care home, or where might you buy a care home that fits with your existing portfolio? And then the final piece is around managing supply and demand. And that's particularly relevant because during this pandemic, the NHS has introduced a capacity tracker for social care. I'm not sure the data going into it is particularly accurate, unfortunately, but I think the principle of a capacity tracker is a good idea in terms of identifying where there is capacity within social care for discharge out of the hospital system. But I think it's the ability, hopefully, to build on those sort of initiatives as a result of this pandemic that will change the way the market operates. If I look at some of the current initiatives, you may be aware that the Health Foundation has teamed up with Future Care Capital for a joint project on data and analytics around social care. So the aim of this is to highlight social care data, which is not nearly as deep and robust as healthcare data, identify data assets that can be deployed immediately, which is clearly very relevant, and recommend what is needed for great data and analytics in the system over the longer term. So I think this is a fantastic initiative. At the moment, they're running a series of workshops. The Health Foundation, you may remember, originally came out of PPP, the health insurance company. When that was sold to AXA, it created a foundation which is actually one of the richest charities in the world. They have about £1 billion to spend on healthcare policy and research. So this is a really good initiative, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. From a more practical perspective, in terms of what's out there today on the data front, there are a number of products that look at the market. There's CareMapper, which is the product that LaingBuisson have their data in, which is on the CACI Insight platform, and also has the Barbour ABI planning data. But a number of the chartered surveyors have their own platforms. So CBRE has Pulse, Carterwood has Carterwood Analytics, and Knight Frank is about to launch a very interesting platform, which has a lot of the data from the care providers that they talk to and value. If you look at what's out there in terms of demographics and wealth, the public data sets are clearly Office for National Statistics, HM Land Registry, but CACI and Experian in particular have an ability to model forward a lot of this data and supplement it with their own data to create some really interesting insights, which Paul will talk about later. And then finally, on the planning side, Barbour ABI and Glenigan's. Barbour ABI is part of Informa and is like LaingBuisson, the sole provider of data to the Office for National Statistics around planning and construction, just as we are for the independent healthcare sector. So there's a lot of people out there providing data already, and it's really trying to understand how to navigate that and what that data provides. Because the danger with big data is there's a lot of it, but what you need to identify is the right data in order to make the decisions that impact your business. And that is actually the hardest part in a way. So I think on that, that's a good opportunity to introduce our three panelists. This is about unlocking opportunities in social care with big data, and it really is about unlocking those opportunities. And we've got a panel which is a mixture of care providers. So we've got Daya on from Kingsley Healthcare, who's the CEO and founder of Kingsley, which is a top 20 care provider. And I think it's really important to have somebody who's at the coalface, who actually accesses this data from multiple sources, but also applies it to the practical challenges of managing and growing a business. And then we have two data providers, Tom Hall, who's the chief economist for Barbour ABI and AMA Research. And that's really in a very good position to give a macro perspective around what's happening at the moment. And then Paul Langston, who's the head of citizens services at CACI, doing amazing things with data, who will talk to us about some of the fascinating trends and insights that they've been able to identify during lockdown. So with that, I am going to turn to Daya to introduce data, social care, and the practicalities of how you use that in terms of running a business and growing a business. So Daya, pleasure to have you on, and over to you. I think we just need to unmute you, Daya. You're on mute. Perfect.
Sorry about it. Good morning, Henry, Jade, Tom, and Paul. Nice to be with you. I think it's a very important topic at the right time. And I want to take a couple of seconds to first congratulate my colleagues in the industry for their tireless effort and hard work during this, the last 6-7 months. I think since March, we've all had a very difficult time, challenging times, but our colleagues, all of us in the industry have worked together as a team. And the credit goes to the people at the front line of care, our carers. They've been amazing. So I think we have a lot to be thankful for what we do and what the team do. So it's a lot to be grateful for our team. So thank you for the opportunity, Henry, and welcome for our colleagues. So I just want to pick up on some of the themes that we have set. So I think the pandemic has forced all of us to rethink our approach to business. We've all been thrust into remote work using multiple platforms that collects a huge amount of data, and especially the events have taken us to work from anywhere to live anywhere concept. That means that we have to embrace these changes and the business planning for better customer service in the work from home environment. It's ever so become part of our day-to-day running of our businesses. So the need to have the relevant data intelligence is very vital, and working to delivering services and engaging the customers and have a deeper integration is the only way that we can get our businesses to work efficiently. I mean, in the recent time, most of us are seeing a lot of people are working from home, and not only they are working from home, so they're available for the larger part of the day, 7 days a week. So how do we connect with them, and how do we integrate, and how do we manage the expectation and deliver a service is very important. So the multiple sources of data and getting them out to the different users are very important as we see it. So I then focused on, in order to deliver the data in a focused way, we as businesses having to make sure we have the data infrastructure to go with it. So that will need a careful planning in terms of investment, the infrastructure, and the structure to go with it. So bear that in mind. So when we invest these things, we've got to be very mindful of we are in possession of data. So we got to make sure the data privacy and security aspect of it is very paramount. And with that, when you get these data, the data integrity is even more important. So having the data is important, one thing, but making sure that we have the right data, that's very, very relevant. And then we are using these data in different environments and is available to various stakeholders. So how do we make sure that this is available on time and is available to the right people? So this is the bigger picture that we as Kingsley, we have been focusing on years. So when it came to it in March, we were almost there, and the IT team here have been absolutely brilliant. So we worked as a team. Henry, perfect. So I want to run through, I think this is very relevant for my colleagues, that I'm sure that all of you do really well, but from a Kingsley perspective, and I thought I'll put some pointers into it. So we have been virtually paperless for the last 8 to 9 years. So there are a lot of professionals who come into our offices, and Henry, you have been here, and the likes of Knight Frank, Carterwood teams, Colliers. There are a lot of my colleagues and the bankers have been here to our offices. And the one thing that you will notice, we have embraced these digital platforms for a very long time. So if we take our HR and employment, we truly have, when somebody is coming onto our websites or our platforms to either LinkedIn or different platforms to apply for jobs. We truly have, with the pandemic, the interviews are conducted. We have one simple link for data upload. We use a DocuSign for all of the information to be collated. And that's very important. So it's quick, fast, efficient. We get them here. In terms of the care planning, so we've been using the electronic care planning tool for the last 11, 12 years. And with that, the medication system is electronic. So most of our running of the care homes, the clinical care side of it is on a digital platform. As is our governance and the regulatory side of it. So that is the bigger part of our function, is to make sure the team understand exactly where we need to focus on and how we devote the resources and how we manage them. And we have a big connection to the regulatory team. As the leading provider, we have a relationship team that's constantly talking. And if you look at the later the inspection regime, and this has helped us to communicate more effectively and efficiently. In terms of finance and accounting, and we have a system that generates timely information. So 5 days after the month end, we have flash figures, and the first 2 weeks after the month end, we have our financial data available to all of us on a digital platform. So from accounts to the variance reports to management meetings are done, and these data are produced, most of it in our back offices in Sri Lanka. So the infrastructure is there and it has worked efficiently. People can review, add comments, edit, and it has been, a useful function. We continue to use them for the last 10 years plus, and we making changes to upgrade them as necessary. Our training academy is very vital because most of our training, our e-learning platforms are delivered through the digital platforms. In addition to that, we are also into, since March, most of our academy work is done and delivered through this platform. We're also delivering, for our staff team and as well as the activities inside the care home, digital activities, so virtual yoga sessions to mindfulness for the staff to we're introducing readings books for our staff children, and all of that is done through our infrastructure. So it's been very beneficial, and we've been able to get this things through to them. Now the procurement ordering, so we use a bespoke system. We've been working on it for the last 4 years. But we have added a lot of features to it. So we have a total electronic procurement system whereby people go to our portal, choose the suppliers, nominated suppliers, order the items. But the intelligent part of it is to supply our team tracking the information like, the price variances, what's the best product available, what are the alternative, what quantities people are buying, so we manage the stocks. We can track all sort of information through our procurement and logistics system, and that directly connect with the suppliers, whereby they upload all of their invoices that are auto-matched to produce our the accounts instantly. Moving on from there to the infrastructure management system via our Kingsley app. So all of the maintenance scheduling to health and safety to the lift maintenance, everything is on digital portal via the app, and that enable the ops and governance teams and the maintenance team to keep on top of the work. I'll pick up the market data analytics. So we have a truly relevant, very comprehensive marketing program. And it's important for us to make sure that we reach the right customers at the right time. and engage with them of the information that they need. And we can target the marketing program. So 4 of our homes have tried a new marketing initiatives, and the audience reach has been, a much higher percentage than the penetration rates have been much higher than that we have envisaged. And the program enabled us to focus and allocate resources properly. On the investment side of it, and I'll pick that up as a separate topic, is a slide which I have put that as part of the next one. I mean, most of our investment appraisal and investment decisions are done using different data sources. And we're working through our Vision 2025 program. We want to double in our capacity over the period. So we, very active in the investment market, and in the last 6 months, we've been managed to do a number of deals, and there are a number of other opportunities. We're looking at it, and this wouldn't have been possible without making use of those applications. The COVID-19 management, and I'm very blessed to have the team that we have and the people who work with us. But it's important that we have a system that tracks everybody that comes into, whether staff or contractors or families, and to get them the information that they need. And we have our own system developed very fast during the March-April time, and that has been in use since the last few months, have been very, very helpful to us. We're one of the companies that we brought on board 2 of our data scientists on board, 2 youngsters, and they have been marvelous, telling us exactly around our home where the infection rates are, telling the staff via text and social media platforms to tell them this is where the issues are in the locality. We plan the number of people getting in, arrange visits and all the rest of it, to have our own test and track system. And we've been really fortunate to have the team and with the facilities that we have. In terms of philanthropic efforts, and which plays a very big part in mine and my wife Sumi and I have 2 foundations, one that help the communities where we work with in the local areas that we operate. Sumi and I come from Sri Lanka, and we're doing some really great work. And these efforts, giving money is the easiest thing, and to making sure that it gets to the right people, and we have the data to make sure that they benefited it, and it truly reaches the audience that we need to get to. So we're supporting schools, children at their homes have tuition and additional work that's happening in the north and south of Sri Lanka. In UK, we've been helping the supplying food to homeless, to working with charities, to helping NHS. So these digital platforms have been really excellent. So the point about it is, we have a host of data. So how do we gather these data, and what do we do with them, and how do we get that distributed, and making sure the stakeholders are actually using them. So that's been the key driver in having the systems that we have. The challenge going forward. So I put down a few thoughts. I'm of the view, I don't think we're going to go back to the old ways of large offices traveling endlessly to different points and working 9 to 5. And those working arrangements are changing, and people are looking at, we're looking at hybrid working models. So we've introduced during this period opening and keeping the offices open as flexible as possible, so people can choose to come and work as well as work from home. And our surveys and talking to the team I mean, a lot of my colleagues are working from home. They've worked hard, they delivered the results, and we feel there isn't any difficulties in us allowing them to have that work-family balance. We've been able to do, but I think that COVID has thrust this upon to us. So these arrangements will continue going forward. Now, that involves a lot of these digital platforms producing a lot of data, and we need to leverage them to take the better business decision in terms of the allocating resources for marketing, buying the right stuff, to getting the information to people, getting people on board, training them, as well as producing relevant information for our ops teams and the home managers. As well as, I mean, we were one of the groups that got in early to source PPE to everything else that we need. And we worked hard to make sure that we have facilities available to our homes in right locations for the next 12, 18 months. And we could have done that without having the right information. And I think this will lead to, innovation. This system has enabled us to look at the better ways of doing things. And that meant we are seeing the cost benefits, but more importantly, improved performance and productivity via data intelligence. And that's the way forward. Now, this is a truly important topic. So Kingsley, we're looking to build between 3 to 5 care homes every year. We've got a large investment team here headed by some very intelligent, smart youngsters running these facilities. So how do we appraise the investment? So we use Carterwood facilities to look at the supply and demand. We use the National Statistics Office program, CACI, as well as the LaingBuisson care mapper programs to look at the wealth segmentation and distribution. So if you look at the supply and demand, so we want to go into a place that there is demand, and then we want to look at where the supply and what kind of supplies are available. And having taken that decision, so there is enough potential there, then the question is, look at the wealth distribution and wealth segmentation. So we run a cost of care model. So we got to make sure that there is sufficient enough opportunity for us to be in that area, to provide that care at the level that we want. So the fee level of £1,100 to £1,200, that's what our average fees are. So to do that, we need the segmentation and the distribution. Then we look at the competition analysis. So if you look at the CACI, the mapper, LaingBuisson care mapper programs, we can easily work out exactly, what kind of quality of stock there and what's the entry pricing. And we certainly don't want to get into a location where we see a number of other operators are already either building or about to commission care homes. So we recently kind of looked at a place, we like it, but we felt, given the data that we have, do we really want to open a third or the fourth, being a third or the fourth operator in the area over the next 24 to 36 months? Is that what we want to do? Definitely the population and household data is very important, because we want to know the staffing pool, what is available, what's the demographics are. These are very relevant to us, including with that is the site connectivity, is that, access into towns, that drive time, schools and facilities that is there for people to move into it. So we build in clusters. So either we move into existing clusters, so we think about new clusters. In order to do that, we need these the key parameters for us to get to analyze that. So during the last 6 months period, I'm delighted using the CACI, the Care Mapper, LaingBuisson Care Mapper to contribute analytics. And we work with all the major investment houses to the research houses like Knight Frank, Colliers, and all of them. And we have been able to agree 3 or 4 of the opportunities, and there are a number of opportunities we are very closely following up. So these market intelligence platforms are readily available, and they are tried and tested programs. It's wonderful to have them, and if any of them want to ever chat to us, we're happy to go through them. And finally, I'm very mindful of the time, so let me run that. So I think the COVID-19 has presented a challenge as well as an opportunity to look at the risk management, where the infection rates are, what's the regions. If, for example, Northwest, we have a number of care homes there. We have a large staff team there, the management team. So making sure that they have the information based on the risk profile of these areas are very important. And we are able to manage the testing data, so the staff, the residents are tested and the data is analyzed and is used by our governance team here. We have a lot of track and trace data here, including infection processes, the number of people unwell, isolating, and they've been away at work, and how do we get help to them? How do we manage our services when the staff are sick? So these are very important. So we've been lucky with those things. Have I come to the end of it, Henry?
Very good. You have. Daya, thank you very much for that. That was an extremely good overview. And I think, from my perspective, what I'm hearing is that you have moved to a virtual existence very, very easily, because you've made that investment in your infrastructure and you're already using data in a way that maybe some of your competitors are not. I mean, the work from home is what everybody's been dealing with, although I know some people think about it as living in the office rather than working from home. But the fact that you were paperless, that you've been able to do your recruitment, your training, your procurement, it's all online. I think though the other key thing is that this data is becoming much more real time. And you mentioned you have a 5-day delay on your financials, but I suspect a lot of the other data you get is very much real time. And that allows people to respond much more quickly. And you've clearly invested in software, in data analysts, in understanding that host of data. And I think more importantly, you gather that data from everyone out there in the market. So I think, with that backdrop, I'm delighted that Tom Hall, who's the chief economist at Barbour ABI, can give us a bit more of a macro perspective in terms of some of the data they've been seeing during the last few months around what's going on out there in the market, both from a care home and a residential perspective. And I think the residential market's clearly linked to the care home market, just because housing equity is really what funds that private pay component of the care sector. So Tom, over to you.
Thanks very much, Henry, and thanks, Daya, for a very informative presentation. And good morning to everyone. Apologies, first off, I'm struggling with a head cold today, so I'm slightly less all singing, all dancing than my normal self. But I'll do my best anyway to just talk you through really some of our planning and construction insights that we've noticed recently. Certainly since I joined Barbour ABI and AMA research about 18 months ago, certainly we're trying to really utilize our data better and utilize it for strategic analysis, which obviously benefits our clients more. And really, I see certainly our companies moving in the direction of both from the very micro level, obviously from your sales leads provider, utilizing our relationships platform as well, which allows you to understand who is working with who, not just who are the major players in the market, but who are the people that are working for the major players in the market, and what are those relationships, because as we know, construction is such a, it can be quite a difficult industry to break into. But also, moving up the scale, we can certainly leverage our data to gain some insights, and that's really what I've been focusing on. So in terms of what I've got to talk to you today, is really, first slide is what's going on in the planning environment for the care home sector over the last year or two. So, and specifically what's been happening with a rather fairly large amount of uncertainty and disruption that we've been having over the last 6 months, thanks to the coronavirus. So first off, it's been quite surprising that planning applications have actually held up surprisingly well. Councils transitioned to home working very successfully, and that flow of new applications was sustained over lockdown, and has been sustained since.
I think, Paul, if it's okay, we'll try and sort out whatever's going on with Tom's
Back,
are you?
sorry. Sorry, I was muted for some reason. So planning applications are strong, and generally but I guess the bad news is that as we've been going more towards the actual point at which spades hit the ground, the planning environment has been weakening. So decision updates have been weaker, and then contract awards and new tenders have been very badly hit by coronavirus. So the graph on the right-hand side is contract awards in the care sector. The blue bars are absolute value, and the red line is the number of new projects month on month from 2019 to 2020. So going back into 2019, you can see over the summer and over autumn the fall in 2019 of contract awards due to all of the political and Brexit uncertainty. Then we had a bit of certainty over late 2019 and early 2020, and we had a return to certain normal levels and fairly strong levels. But then obviously with lockdown, all sectors were fairly significantly impacted. The residential sector overall being very badly impacted, but the care sector less so. I guess, obviously a huge amount of activity there through lockdown as well, which no doubt meant more projects were progressing than in the residential sector in the whole. But obviously, almost zero projects in May, which is fairly unprecedented. Since then, we've had a pretty good comeback. Slightly less strong than in other sectors. We've moved back to more like low normal activity levels, rather than a really strong strong recovery, which I think probably represents the the continuing uncertainty, both from obviously a coronavirus perspective, but obviously macroeconomic uncertainty as well. And obviously, the risks of a disruptive Brexit are going to disrupt both the construction sector and the care sector as well. So I think my expectation in terms of planning is kind of activity levels, certainly over the rest of 2020, kind of normal to low normal to normal volumes really. So that's the planning environment. Henry, if you're okay to, yeah, thank you very much. Perfect. So looking forward, so really using our knowledge of construction and knowledge of the planning environment and all of those projects that we've got on our database, we can create a set of forecasts by all the sectors and all the subsectors in the construction industry, and also regionally, so we can really understand where activity is likely to happen in the future and how strong that is. So you can really see that link from the macro forecast all the way down to the actual projects, which are hopefully going to be getting built over the near and longer term future. So on the graphs here on the right hand side, the upper one is total construction output forecasts from 2020 up to 2025. And then the lower graph is regional output, although index values rather than absolute values, comparatively by region. So could have done a map here, but didn't have time. So you've just got a graph which is maybe less clear. So apologies. So yeah, first off, you can see that the fall in Q2 2020 was still fairly serious, but at the same time, less so than compared to the residential sector and other commercially minded sectors. Again, reflecting, the level of activity in that sector required due to the pandemic. And I think the key thing, certainly looking at the construction sector at the moment, and this is fairly consistent across all the other commercially minded sectors, is that we're not seeing an immediate bounce back to previous pre-coronavirus, early 2020, late 2019 levels. We're seeing a period of lower activity, albeit fairly stable activity, somewhere, in the region of kind of 15, maybe to 20% down on where we were over Christmas, kind of earlier this year. However, the good news is that that in the care sector, we're seeing fairly strong activity after that short-term period of slightly lower activity, which is certainly not what we're seeing in some of the other commercially minded sectors. So we're seeing really strong growth after from Q3 2021 onwards, and then strengthens consistently up to 2025, which is a really positive for the sector, and I guess reflects the continuing high demand for residential care, given our demographics, etc. Moving to the lower graph, over the remainder of this year and towards next year, we're seeing a bit of a fair amount of difference across UK regions. So really strong activity being seen across the West Midlands, Northwest, and the Northeast. So more generally Midlands and stronger, and weaker activity in the East Midlands, East of England, Wales, and London. However, East of England picks up very strongly towards the end of 2021, and it is starting to help drive that bounce back that we're seeing in the upper graph, kind of late 2021. I should also probably mention our hospices sector. So care sector is our residential sector, and then also we have the hospices sector, which is in the healthcare sector, and that's also seeing a very, very similar trajectory as well. So that's broadly it. I think obviously positive medium to long term view, but in the short term things are looking a bit slower than they were earlier on. But I think really positive, and obviously the industry deserves a huge amount of credit in terms of how it's got back to work after lockdown. However, uncertainty both from coronavirus and the macroeconomic slowdown, higher unemployment rates, etc., and then obviously finally Brexit is potentially going to disrupt a lot of things, not least labour, both in construction. I'm sure care will also be affected if, of course, there is a big cliff edge in January, and supply of goods. So overall positive, but certainly a fair amount of downside risk in there as well.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. I think my takeaway is that the sector's fundamentally strong, is what I'm hearing, and that may have shut down in May in the middle of the pandemic, but it's come back. It's perhaps not bounced back as strongly as we might have expected, and that some other sectors have seen more of a V-shaped bounce back. But I think maybe my takeaway is more it's steady as it goes. It might be slightly subdued, but there is construction going on out there, and I think that's really important for the sector, that people are underpinned by those strong demographics, believe that need new capacity out there in the market, which is a very good segue into our next speaker, Paul, who is Head of Citizen Services at CACI, and I guess is looking at that demand as opposed to supply through the lens of the data that he analyzes. So Paul, I'm delighted to have you on. Over to you.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you everyone on the call and for the previous speakers. So at CACI, we support many of the largest elderly care and retirement living providers with their location and marketing strategies, and I head up the innovative work that we're doing in that space. So today I'm just going to highlight a few of the big and even quite small data sets that can help you to make the most of the opportunities in the care sector at a point of major change, as the last two speakers have highlighted. So from this slide here, since the beginning of COVID-19, we've been partnering with an organization called Location Sciences to use anonymized, stress anonymized, mobile phone data to understand the movement of people. Now, this is a seriously big data set of billions of records. We've been publishing the findings weekly, and clients ranging from care sector and local authorities to major retailers and banks have signed up and are using the reports to see how customers are really behaving as movement restrictions change. Now, it's fascinating stuff, and I could talk about it for hours, but I've not got that time. So there's a little link here. So if you want to, feel free to sign up for the free weekly reports on that link. But in summary, what this chart here is saying is that the big data reflects clear national patterns, showing from the left of this chart to the right, it shows how people reduce their movement in line with lockdown, gradually increase their activity in line with national and local policy. They enjoyed the summer, and now just in that last week of data, they seem to be starting to pull back, as we've seen from government policy. So if you build to the next click, what we can also see is that different demographic groups have responded differently. This is using our ACORN classification, and basically if you drill into this, we can particularly see how less affluent ACORN groups, which may include care workers, were moving around more during peak lockdown and therefore were more vulnerable to the virus. We've also seen how many of the most affluent groups have moved the least, reflecting why the government was so keen to get these groups back out moving to boost the economy. If we move it forward, this is just one example, but we can use the data at a local level to track and predict behaviours. Here is a classic example of a local lockdown. You could see that movement was lower than average, so it started at 100%, dropped really low. It then spiked. They were put on local lockdown, and you saw that drop down and come back. So we're supplying this data to support healthcare planning and COVID response. We've also had interest from care home operators considering using this data to prioritize opening up homes for visitors. And finally, on this slide, this data can be used to understand true catchments. So this map of visitors to Croxley Green, where I live and am presenting from, shows how people who visit my neighborhood, where they come from. This is a potentially very powerful tool for understanding true care home catchments and areas of influence. Okay. So that was a just quick look at some of the fascinating insights from really big data sets out there. But if we move forward, as Daya has already outlined, you and your organizations are also gaining bigger and bigger data sets on your customers and inquiries. These data sets are key to you meeting the needs and wants of your customers and in turn maximizing your returns. Through your customer databases and CRM systems, you know who your customers are, where they live, what products and services they need, and whether you're dealing with the primary customer, the resident, or the secondary customer, their next of kin or primary carer. Also, by tracking this data over the COVID period, you can understand how customers and their needs are changing. So if we build that forward, to meet customer need, you need to understand the different nuances, attitudes, and lifestyles of your specific target customers. And one proven way of doing this is to link this to big market data sets. So this example here uses our household ACORN classification, which, as this very long list in the middle shows, includes 33 distinct customer segments that I believe are directly relevant for many of your services, whether in terms of contacting primary or secondary customers. So segmenting in this way enables you to identify, understand, and locate distinct customer groups. In this example, I've grouped ACORN groups together to produce two distinct segments. So by mapping these segments back to your unique products. Let's imagine you've got 4 different products, A to D, you've got primary and secondary customers. By mapping this across, you can actually underpin your strategy. So for example, looking at the blue ones, during COVID, are you seeing relatively larger numbers of inquiries from distressed, financially pressurized carers needing urgent nursing and dementia care for their loved ones? And how do you reach more of those? If you look at the amber ones, are you now getting fewer independent and affluent couples wanting to move to your product B, your assisted living? If so, how do you promote product A, your independent living products, to offset those losses? So this data provides proven insight to help you to open profitable sites where your key targets want to live, align your products and services to meet their wants and needs, increase your occupancy with cost-effective targeting using the right message and media, and all of this combined together helps you to improve your performance and customer satisfaction. But so far, as Henry said, I've talked about demand because that's our bag. But it's not just the demand that's changing. We are seeing that newer, higher quality, purpose-built homes are increasingly attractive in the current market. Now, this offers an opportunity for growth through investment in new and existing sites for many of you. And that's something that Daya talked about. So through our unique partnership with LaingBuisson and Barbour ABI, we can fully understand both this changing supply. And you can easily identify local opportunities anywhere in the UK using our online reporting platforms, the CareMapper. So CACI bring current and future year population projections by age and demographic segment, as well as up-to-date property values for your specific target customers. These are then enhanced by LaingBuisson's unique supply of their regional age-standardized demand metrics. LaingBuisson's industry-leading dataset of over 11,000 care homes provides the insight into who your true local competitors are based on their fees, providers, facilities, and occupancy. And as we've seen just now from Tom, Barbour's unique industry research provides the latest pipeline, including the new, refurbished, alterations and conversions of homes that will shape your future competition. So, as many of you are looking to new products, services, and operating models to reflect the current market, you need this big and reliable data to support these critical business decisions. And you need this in an easy to use and implementable format. So that's why, if you look in the middle, we've got our clear 10 red, amber, green indicators and text commentary in our reports that help you to actually make actions. Because you're investing for the long term, we focus on bed need over the next 5 years based on our small area population forecasts, your demographic segments, and your specific existing and pipeline competitors. And because we know that you know your market better than any system can, we allow you to overlay your local knowledge to further refine the competition within the reports. Daya talked about matching price points as well. So to match your price points to local affordability, you can also easily enter your own fee rates and test local scenarios using age-specific local property values. And finally, so that you can get your message out to reach both potential residents and their next of kin, there's a local marketing section that identifies the specific local areas to target in your bespoke catchments. So I've covered a lot of ground, but in summary, in the care sector, you've got big decisions to make and precious customers and businesses to protect. And I hope there I've shown how big and relatively small data can help you to achieve that.
Paul, thank you very much indeed for that. It's a really good overview of some of the ways you can slice and dice these data sets and really drill down. I think we've got about 10 minutes left, maybe even less. I'm going to just go to the Q&A. I'm very reassured actually that the poll, 82% of people think that big data will make a practical difference, which is clearly good news. But I think there are a lot of questions here for you, Daya, and I know you're on mute, but if you're able to unmute yourself, I think people are very interested to know, well, first of all, how you market to your residents or potential residents digitally, what KPIs you're tracking, and how you are going to enhance the collection of data from your residents and staff to actually increase I guess your business opportunities, but actually maybe the way you run the business. So a lot of this is around what data are you gathering and how are you using it on residents, both to acquire them, but also when they're in your homes.
Sure. So if you look at the marketing side of it, so we've been using this market intelligence product for the last 3.5, 4 years. So what we try to do is just to put together our proposition to the marketplace and see what interest that we gather, and from there then you build profile of what we want to deliver at what price point and how do we want to engage with the customers. So our market intelligence software, it's very unique in the manner that when somebody so we have various initiatives out there, and when somebody see those initiatives and then they are engaging with us, and then we know exactly what works, what are they looking for, and then soon after we engage with them and get them to see our facilities and engage with our team. We also have the customer service team making connection with them and to see, what do they think of it. And then it's a continuous refinement process. So it's the age-old things, you work on the information that you have, refine them, re-engage. And for that, you need the data, and you need them so quickly. Say, for example, one other thing that we found, people want us to engage with them faster, quicker. So when somebody come onto our platforms, they stay on the platform for a period of time, and we know either they can find other homes or they come to us. And when they come, and then we engage with the families to the extent, are they happy? What do they think of our product? What refinement that we need to do? How do we improve our services and continue to connect with them? So if you take from that point, and then there are issues that crop up, in terms of staff training issues, to reskilling our team as to what went right, what has done well and what hasn't done well. Recently, we launched as I said in my presentation, in 4 of our homes, some specific market initiatives, and the returns have been, enormous. I mean, we made huge strides into making sure that we get to showcase what we are good at, what our offering is, how do we make connection with them, and how do we stay in contact and to facilitate. It's all about the service. I mean, you look at the large tech industries, for example, the Amazons of the world, they have perfected it so much so to the extent it is all about delivering a service that others want. And unless you are in that game delivering that, it will be very difficult. I mean, I recall the conversation, Henry, that we had with Paul and Tom yesterday, and when Paul indicated what he's seeing in our industry is what he saw 20 years ago in the retail industry. So we are at the infancy where we must commit more resources, we must refine our processes, we must reach out to these audiences and leverage for that. I mean, why would you want to build a care home in a particular way? It depends on what the customer segment that you're targeting, what's the price of your offering or the cost of care is, and how do you leverage that? In order to do that, you need the information. And here we pretty much know on a daily basis what every home does, what inquiries they have at the occupancy level. We have a sample number of, almost the cost structure for the day to the revenue and what you end up with.
So that's really, I think you hit the nail on the head there around that retail observation, and that's a really good one to draw out. The retail sector is significantly more sophisticated in its use of data, and healthcare and social care in particular is way behind. I'm just literally running out of time, so I'm just going to ask one question to Tom quickly, which is really two elements of it. One is how many planning applications that you see in your systems actually end up getting built, they become a care home. So what's the conversion rate from planning to actually supply in the market? And then the second was a question just around the spike in Q1 of 2025 in your forecasts in construction activity, and what was behind that?
Sure. So first one, general historical rule of thumb is around 80% of applications end up actually getting built. As I referenced in my talk, though, more recently we've certainly seen with a much higher activity in earlier stages of planning. I think that kind of received knowledge may be at the moment, due to the atypical conditions, might be less at the moment, certainly in some of the other sectors, but it does look like the residential care sector is more stable than others, so might be less badly affected by that. Other one in terms of, yes, I did notice that there is a big spike in Q1 of 2025. What's driving it? Just higher activity levels compared to the past, really. So at that range of, at that far out a distance in 2025, obviously that, as I should have referenced the error bands around the graph. Yeah, that there's a fair amount of inaccuracy at that level. So it's just really the fact that we've seen a strengthening pipeline in that period, and that results in a bit of a spike in activity. So yeah, so that's really the only answer.
I'm going to squeeze one more question into you, Daya, and I think it's quite a practical one. If you're building 3 to 5 homes a year, how many sites do you have to assess to find those 3 to 5 homes? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 100?
Probably 4 times more. So we look at 20 to 30 sites a year. So we're constantly looking at them. So we commissioned the next one in Brackley in the next few weeks, and then we've got 4 opportunities that we have exchange contracts or signed the option agreement, and then we probably have opportunity to do a few more between now and April. So we're really looking forward to it. But all this is possible because of the data that we're getting from LaingBuisson to CACI to Carterwood, and it's been a wonderful opportunity for us to focus on investment decision based on the data that we have, rather than 20 years ago when I started and I went to see a place and I liked it, but we didn't have the data. So things are very different now.
I'm going to have to stop you there, I'm afraid, because we're out of time. But that's very helpful. So 20 sites for your sort of 3 to 5 for each home. That's a lot of work. But look, I think I just have to wrap up and just say thank you very much to our partners, to CACI and Barbour, to our media partner Care Markets, and our charity partners, Care Workers Charity, and Turn to Us. Just to say, we do have our social care and retirement living conference coming up on the 13th of October, where we're going to drill down into a lot of these topics in more detail, particularly the digital elements, with representatives from Care England, who've been very much at the forefront of developing some of the know-how here. And if you go to our website, we also have a care home construction and healthcare construction report, which is written jointly with AMA Research. So I think the construction sector, the data that goes behind that is simply going to improve dramatically. And I think it's a very exciting time for the sector. And as we've seen, people are still building care homes even during a pandemic and a lockdown. So thank you all very, very much indeed. Let us have any Q&A or suggestions for the next webinar, and look forward to seeing you hopefully on the 13th of October.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.